All right, good evening, Dog fans. We're here to talk basketball, Georgia basketball. We're thinking basketball. That's right. Here it is, January 23rd, 2026. Going to be talking about the game, the post-game comments a little bit from the Missouri game where the Dogs went on the road, picked up a huge SEC win, 74-72 over Missouri, a hostile crowd out there. Hard-fought game. The Dogs battled back and forth. It was we led most of the game. However, we actually led, especially in the second half. We held with. I think we probably led 2/3 of the game, and let them battle back in a couple of times, especially down the stretch. They got hot, had some good three-point shooting, and they're a tough defensive team. Obviously, by the score, we didn't get in the 90s. We eked it out 74-72, but. No matter, we were a 2-point, underdog, and we won by 2, and so, we covered the spread. We looked good. I just feel like the Dogs. That was a huge win on the road, especially after we'd had that crushing loss. We're still trying to get that out of our minds. That crushing loss at home to Ole Miss on the overtime buzzer beater. But that game has sort of since then, the 2 games since then. Our defense has responded to that lack of defense in that game to playing much more connected defense, and apparently it's some attention to rebounding as well as paying off. We had a little too many turnovers in this game, but so did Missouri. But it was just a scrappy grinder game, and to get that on the road is really huge. So that's behind us. We moved to 4-2 in the SEC. Texas, where we're going tomorrow, they're 2-4 in the SEC, having just lost at Kentucky. They competed well, but I think Kentucky just got ahead of them a little bit there at the end. Maybe I can't remember the score. Let's see, I don't have it. But they kind of wore down there at the end. And Kentucky's always tough at home. The Big Blue Nation. They are tough in their friendly confines. So. How does this look, though? How does this matchup shape up for tomorrow? And let me make sure I talk to you, circle back to the weather and what the game at Kentucky looked like for Texas. Okay, so here's what we got coming in. Vegas opened up as with the Dogs as a 1.5-point underdog, and now it's moved to 2.5. It went back and forth, and it's now kind of settled in at 2.5. Let's look at our rankings. The net rankings have us at 24, Texas behind at 43. Ken Pomeroy rankings have us at 26 and has Texas back at 41. So we're ahead, 24-43 in the net. We're ahead 26-41 in Ken Pom, but home field advantage tends to bring those numbers together and negate some of that. That's why we're an underdog, slight underdog on the road, even though we have the advantage in the Ken Pom rankings and the net rankings. The OddsShark computer models have us as a 3-point underdog, and they've not run their simulations yet, or as time of doing this, 8 o'clock on Thursday night, Friday night, I'm sorry. They had not run the models and had a predicted score, but they had the Dogs as a 3-point underdog. So across the board, everybody's seeing us as kind of a 3-point underdog, and a lot of that has to do with the home field advantage. So here's my point. There's an ice storm coming in. I'm thinking the Dogs are already out there and are just settling in, going to get up in the morning, have a meal, walk through, and get ready for the game. Probably doing something tonight in the way of a walkthrough. The weather's not going to get real bad there in Austin until about mid-morning, midday tomorrow, when it's going to start dipping into the 30s, maybe low 30s, and there's going to be some rain, a pretty good chance of rain, mixed with some freezing temperatures that is going to start kicking in either around game time or a little bit after game time, or either a couple hours after game time. So I think and it's going to get progressively worse according to the weather models that I saw. So if you're a fan out there in Austin and you're getting ready for what the weather forecasts are going to tell you is potentially damaging ice that night, and you've made plans to go to the game, you didn't plan on an ice storm. So you've got to weigh your options. How many people out there who are going to go to the game now are not going to be able to go to the game because they're worried about this ice storm or making preparations for it, or worried about being on the road as these conditions get worse. So these questions I asked to say the home field advantage that the odds makers were looking at when they came up with these numbers a couple of days ago. Well, I'm sure they can look at the weather too, but just have to take that into effect. Maybe, or into account, maybe the home field advantage for Texas is not as good as it normally is. Now, what else can factor into that? Let's look at depth. In the game against Kentucky, Texas had six players with 26 or more minutes that played in that game against Kentucky. And Kentucky wore them down near the end of the game, second half. They had two more players, one who played 8 minutes and another who played 11 minutes. Neither of those players scored. So they got 5 players, Texas runs out there, and they play the bulk of the minutes. And they got 2 guys that come off of the bench that play about 10 minutes each. The Dogs have 11 players who, I think, if I recall correctly, are averaging at least 11 minutes apiece. So we've got greater depth, and we don't have a huge drop-off. As I mentioned with our guard play, we've got 5 guards that can play, and some of them have better games than others. Some of them have been more consistent than others. But generally speaking, none of them have been a disaster when they played. So we got 5 guards we can count on. They got 5 players they can count on. You see what I'm saying? So we've got 4 other positions that that we got covered too, with depth, greater depth than they have. So that should play to our advantage down the road if we can make this a fast-paced game, back and forth, and let's drive up the score and see what we get. So that's what I think is going to happen, or I expect to happen. I think our depth will be a difference maker. I hope the weather holds and we're able to get the game and there's no power outages around game time. And if all goes well, the Dogs will steal another one, will rob the train in Texas and get out of there with a narrow, I'm going to say a 4 to 5, let's say a 4-point win, 5-point win, 85-80. Dogs get out of there. We don't get in the 90s, but we get our 85-80 victory on the road and pick up that second road SEC win. So there you have it. Go Dogs.